James Franklin to Florida? No. James Franklin to a Power 4 program? Coming to a storyline near you.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, craziest sport on planet Earth. I need to talk about the collision course in Georgia and what happened on Saturday to continue to set that up because, boy, it's going to be just a wild ride of fun. Thoughts on Michigan? Thoughts on Texas? Some people, me, didn't rank them after they beat Oklahoma, and they showed you why on Saturday. This episode brought to you by our friends at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, James Franklin made it very clear on ESPN's College Game Day over the weekend when he appeared live, and I was really excited to watch it, and it was a lot of coach speak, to be sure, but there were a couple of notable takeaways. He wants to go and coach again. The desire is still there. He does not appear burned out. He was genuinely surprised, I believe, that he was let go despite the results being a complete and utter disaster this season, year 12. And I know what his big game record is. You know what else you have to consider with James Franklin? He went to a Penn State program that was not in, shall we say, the greatest state of being in college football, turned them into a winner for over a decade, did win a Big Ten championship, had them one play from the national championship game a season ago, and also recruited and developed at a high level. Look at the number of guys that James Franklin programs sent into the NFL. It's a big number over the years. So if I were a Power 4 program with a head coaching vacancy, there are a few of those right now. I would not consider James Franklin if I were Florida. The reason is that I know what James Franklin is as a head coach at a place that was fully committed to winning. I believe is still fully committed to winning. Their firing of Franklin proved just that. I think that's a good thing if you're a Nittany Lions fan. But just because it stopped working there doesn't mean it cannot go and work out with another school. Because this season was going awry. But what about the previous seasons? There wouldn't be, if you took out the big game narrative, which matters at Florida, and it's why I don't think there is a match there. I don't think you can have that hanging over the program. I don't think that Franklin is the best coach that the University of Florida should be able to go and get for its football program. I mean, my goodness, no. They should be able to aim higher. Not every program can. I'll be pretty surprised if James Franklin is not a head coach in college football come 2026. I'll be very surprised. And I actually think staying in the Big Ten could be the right place to go. Because what do we know? We know what James Franklin is. And any coach that was at a place in the Big Ten and won for 10 plus years, regardless of which school, after going to Vanderbilt and proving that he can win games there, which is immensely difficult. What other coach, if you took away the name and just did a blind resume there, how would that coach not get another chance? I don't think that James Franklin is done coaching. I don't think he's done winning college football games as long as he goes to a place that has the necessary investment. I believe Wisconsin and James Franklin could be a really good fit because James Franklin is intimately familiar with the Big Ten. And Franklin has had some big-time recruits over the years, but do they recruit at a top 5 level all the time, the way Ohio State or Oregon try to do? Or like some of the big-time SEC programs? Nope, that's not the expectation. What does Wisconsin need? They are trending, if they aren't there already, towards being the worst team in the Big Ten. I don't know that they win a conference game this year. I don't know how they'd win a conference game. They're going to go play Oregon next week. Why don't you ask Rutgers how easy it is to play the Ducks ever since they lost to Indiana on their home field? Rutgers gave up 750 yards of offense, and Oregon pulled their starters. They could have put up close to 900 if they'd wanted to. So Wisconsin is going to get beat soundly next week in Eugene. And Luke Fickell is reportedly staying around. Nobody knows why. There's no season to save. There's not a bunch of talent on this roster. I think James Franklin can, at the very least, be a 5-year transitional coach that reestablishes your brand as a program. Because Wisconsin is down, and they are down bad. I mean, really bad. Maryland's only Big Ten win. They nearly beat UCLA this weekend, but got UCLA at 2.5 for the best bets. 4 in 1 week. I might just stop there. No, I'm under 500. I'll get it right. Hopefully. James Franklin going to Wisconsin and reestablishing the floor that program has had, that hadn't missed a bowl game since basically I was born, and will now miss it for a second straight year. I think Franklin could go there and succeed. I really do. Another program I'd look at is Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has immense potential in a conference where Duke is currently a program that is on the ascension. Now, Duke, who we'll talk about later, hit a roadblock. That was Georgia Tech last week. But the point remains that the ACC is as open of a league as you can find. It's not impossible to climb up to the top. The Big Ten and the SEC, I think the Big Ten more so, have teams at the top that, boy, you might be able to try and go and join their level, but I don't think you can go past them. In the Big 12, you can go past anybody. In the ACC, you can almost go past anybody, because look at what Miami just showed. They're the best team in the ACC, right? Nope, that's Georgia Tech. Because Georgia Tech didn't get upset as a 2-touchdown favorite at home to Louisville last week. Miami, of course, did. So Virginia Tech is a place that, from a recruiting standpoint, from a program tradition standpoint, if they have the necessary administrative support, I could see James Franklin going and being the Virginia Tech head coach. Would it feel a little strange? Perhaps. It would be the second time that Penn State sent somebody down to be the head coach of Virginia Tech. Maybe the Hokies don't want to go in that direction for that reason, but Franklin's track record is a whole heck of a lot better than his former defensive coordinator, Brent Pry, who did not have a successful tenure and was, of course, relieved of his duties earlier this year. I think both of those spots make plenty of sense. I don't think Florida makes sense. That doesn't feel like the right fit. I don't think Auburn would make sense if and probably when that job comes available. Arkansas is interesting, but they feel like they're trending towards Bobby Petrino, who's just looking for that signature win. He has come close. He wants the job. I don't know how available that is because, frankly, James Franklin going to, I didn't mean to say that, sorry, but if James Franklin were to go to, I don't know, UCLA, I think that could make a lot of sense because that's another program that needs to have its floor elevated because they bottomed out. But what are you seeing with Tim Skipper right now and Jerry Neuheisel as offensive coordinator? I think that would have been a legitimate option. When, weeks ago on this show, I was pondering whether James Franklin would be fired and where he could go. In my head, I went, UCLA could make some sense. I don't think that job's coming open now, because Skipper and Neuheisel are doing way too good of a job, and they've got Nico there. They could bring him back, and UCLA's kind of a good team right now. They play Indiana this week. We'll see just how good. But I think either of those places for James Franklin, he still wants to coach. I don't think he has forgotten how. This is not trying to make something work that hasn't worked in a really long time. I really do think that James Franklin could go somewhere and win. I don't know that he'd take you to a conference championship level. He struggled to do that at Penn State. So he probably wouldn't do that at Wisconsin. But if you were Wisconsin, would you sign up for 5 years of an average of 8.5 wins right now? I think you would do that in a heartbeat. I think James Franklin could give you that. So expect James Franklin to return to a school near you by 2026. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. The collision course down in Georgia. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they are worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track. And that can mean leaving money on the table. You don't want to do that. That is why you should start using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy use interface on your laptop or your phone. So if you have that one financial goal you've been trying to get to for a long time and you just haven't been able to get over the hump, Monarch is here to help you out. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. It's half off. Pretty darn good. That's monarch.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarch.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season's here. FanDuel has an offer that you just don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. What a deal. College football is back, and it's just beautiful. To make it even better and more exciting, you got to check out FanDuel. Prop bets, point spreads, money lines, it's all over there. Everything that you could possibly want for every big game and beyond. For the sickos out there, FanDuel's got you covered. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. Brent Key is a really good football coach. I picked him to lose over the weekend. He was a road underdog against a Duke team that hadn't lost an ACC game and had started to get their expensive quarterback Darian Mensah going. And Georgia Tech said, yeah, enough of that, and beat him 27-18. Game wasn't even that close. Georgia Tech had a bigger lead. Duke had a late touchdown. It was competitive, but Georgia Tech was just better. The Yellowjackets are such a fun watch because they're just tough. They're gritty. They're hard-nosed. Their offense has got a clear identity. It runs through Haynes King. There are a lot of quarterbacks. Yesterday I talked about Baron Morton's importance to Texas Tech, and you can say this about Arizona State as well with Sam Leavitt and a number of other examples where you lose your quarterback and you are going to have a significant drop-off. That might not be true anywhere more than Georgia Tech, not necessarily from a statistical standpoint, but from a heart and soul standpoint. Haynes King is just a fun watch. He's not a traditional quarterback. His passing is fine. That's all it needs to be because he can run the football. But Georgia Tech going on the road and beating Duke when they were a point spread underdog. And I had this debate with some people in the YouTube comments a while back. If a team is unranked but favored and the ranked team wins, is that an upset? Because in the eyes of some, it wasn't an upset when USC beat Michigan. I said, well, but Michigan was ranked in the AP Top 25 and USC was not. Oh, but USC was favored. So did number 12 Georgia Tech just upset Duke on the road? No, I think that's frankly pretty silly. But Georgia Tech runs for 171 yards in this game. 120 of them are Haynes King. I don't know why he doesn't get more Heisman love. He's a pretty awesome watch. Georgia Tech is a program that has had plenty of potential. Kind of reminds me of Virginia Tech in the ACC. They've been, okay, kind of relevant, not really though in a national way, but you've always felt like there was potential and you just had to find the right coach. Brent Key's the right coach. He's got Georgia Tech moving in a really, really good direction. And that direction is kind of towards the college football playoff. Certainly the ACC championship game. I think Georgia Tech will lose one game this year in the regular season, at least. I think if they go 10-2, they might be in. But let me throw this at you. This is because it's a might. It might happen. Georgia Tech has to play Syracuse this week at home. They should win that game. They go at NC State. Okay. They go at Boston College. What if they lose to Pitt or NC State? What if they just drop one of those games? What if? What if that were to happen? Do you realize the collision course that is right in front of you for the last week of the regular season? Do you realize that Georgia and Georgia Tech play the last week of the regular season? Do you realize that? Do you realize that Georgia has a manageable schedule going forward? Manageable. Very, very manageable. The Bulldogs have got the one loss to Alabama. What if they lost, I don't know, to Mississippi State somehow? They're not going to lose to Florida off the bye week. What if Texas somehow tripped them up? What if that happened? The last week of the regular season. This is the... You know that old commercial with Dwayne Wade, and he's got the devil Dwayne Wade on one shoulder and the angel Dwayne Wade on the other one? And the angel Dwayne Wade is saying, take a nice jump shot, Dwayne. Just take it in. Just go nice and easy. And the devil's going to take it in and dunk on him, Dwayne. And then he takes it in, dunks on him. Then the Angels going, do it again, do it again. Yeah, all-time commercial there. There's the devil Spencer on my shoulder saying, I want Georgia and Georgia Tech to be a de facto college football playoff play-in game the last week of the regular season. What would have to happen? They'd both have to lose a game before then. Does 10-2, as any SEC team, especially Georgia, get you in with a loss to Alabama? Yes. Yes, I believe it will. I don't want to debate right now whether it should. I'm just saying that it will. With 10-2 as an ACC team, without a win over a presently ranked team, their best win is Clemson or Duke, would that get you into the playoff? Tougher question. Tougher question. So the devil on my shoulder is telling me, I want these teams to both lose between now and then, so that it's not just a fact. At the very least, give me one of these teams losing, so that there's at least one-sided playoff stakes. But can you imagine what that game, what that scene will be like on November 28th when Georgia and Georgia Tech square off? If there's a legitimate playoff berth on the line, we might not get there. These teams might be too good. Gunnar Stockton's playing well. Haynes King is playing well. Georgia Tech is just a really well-coached, disciplined, tough football team that has been in some close games, and they have found ways to win. They're going to be favored in every game going forward. Georgia's going to be favored in every game going forward. Do you remember what happened last year when these teams played? Rumor on the street is that they are still playing overtimes in Athens. They haven't figured it out yet. They're just still going in an alternate universe. So Georgia over the weekend, of course, knocked off Ole Miss in a very impressive win. Down 2 possessions in the second half, came back. It's all about the offense. I don't think that 5 years ago, even if Georgia Tech had been where they're at now, I would think they could legitimately threaten Georgia. But I can't say that anymore because I watched last year and I watched Georgia Tech this year and I go, oh, they're a better football team. Which is weird because they lost to Eric Singleton. He goes to Auburn and he's probably not having as much fun as if he had stayed at Georgia Tech. But hey, that's the risk you run when you transfer away from a good program to one that is in a do-or-die situation. And heck, by the time you're listening to or watching this show, maybe Auburn has fired Hugh Freeze. He's 0-4 in SEC play, and yeah, he's just going to fight and scrap and claw just to make a bowl game this year. Not exactly what the Tigers were hoping for in year 3. But if Georgia and Georgia Tech continue along this path, I would love to see them have a great regular season meeting, a rematch in the playoff. I'm telling you, it's not out of the question. Georgia Tech is kind of like BYU. They find a way. They just find a way. They just get it done. And in this world of college football that is more level and has more parity than ever before, you got to give the credit where it is earned. And that is in teams. There's 4 teams that just find a way to get wins. And Georgia Tech does that. So just keep an eye. Just keep an eye. If any madness or craziness ensues in this wonderful, great, crazy sport of college football, there's a world where Georgia and Georgia Tech is a de facto play-in game. Gosh, I want it so badly. I don't say it because I dislike the Bulldogs or the Yellowjackets. The energy of an in-state, non-conference game in rivalry week, oh my gosh. I get excited just thinking about it. I really, really do. I don't get that excited thinking about Texas, though. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I love it. You love it. We all love it. The energy in the stands, the rivalries, the tailgates, there is just nothing like it. But let's be real. Getting the tickets to the games can be a real hassle. More of a battle than the game itself. None of us want that. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I have used Game Time multiple times in the last couple of months. I saved money compared to other ticketing services. I went to see John Mulaney with my brother in Vegas not long ago. Guess what? Compared the same row to other ticketing services, saved hundreds of dollars for 2 tickets. Game Time is the way to go. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Should we have had Joe Tessitore on the call for Texas after they beat Oklahoma instead of Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit to give the iconic Texas is back, folks moment? That's what some people thought last week, including the AP voters, who we know make a lot of mistakes. They do. It's hard. I put together a top 25 every week, started that this year, and I'll give the AP voters a little bit of respect and leeway. It is difficult. If you haven't tried to do it before, go ahead, attempt it. It's hard. It's not as hard as they make it look. Texas beats Oklahoma, and that win should have been treated the way that Florida State's win over Alabama is being treated. An anomaly, a fluke, and says more about the other team perhaps than what that team actually did. Because Texas went back into the top 20. You know what I was so angry with about myself? I was really upset that somewhere in my best bets, even if I'd swapped it out for one of the 4 that I actually got right last week, I still can't believe that happened. I'm going to ride off that emotional high all week. Just you wait. Anyway, I'm really upset I didn't see the emotional letdown on the road against upset-minded Kentucky because Texas was favored by 12.5, which is inexplicable. Because the Texas offense has no business against an SEC opponent being favored by double digits. I don't care who it is. I just watched them go struggle with Kentucky. Like the willingness to just forget how Arch Manning has looked. The willingness to forget that Texas lost to Florida, who is such a poor team. I forgot to mention this yesterday, by the way. If Florida's NIL collective doesn't do everything in their power to retain DJ Lagway and Dallas Wilson, the wide receiver, I don't know what they are doing. Didn't include that in yesterday's show. Wanted to bring that up. Bringing this back to Texas. This is not a very good football team. It's a one-sided football team. Texas is the Iowa of the SEC. That's what they are. They're Iowa in the SEC with burnt orange and a big name at quarterback. That's it. That's what they are. Because the Texas defense the last 2 weeks after not playing well against Florida backed up what I felt about them coming into this year. They're one of the 10 best units in college football. Now, they had a bad game. And frankly, when you think about it, every defense has a bad game, or every offense has a bad game at some point in time. The Texas defense overwhelmingly has been very good. They won the game with a goal line stand against Kentucky, but that's what it took. And then the offense, after the goal line stand in overtime, just needing a field goal, which they ended up making for the win, thank goodness for the sake of Longhorn fans, they were going backwards. This is an Arch problem. This is a Steve Sarkisian problem. This is an offensive line problem. Like, Arch gets a lot of the criticism. I've been very critical of Arch. You cannot watch Texas and think it is only Arch Manning. He is a problem, no doubt about it. You can't. I don't know how, as a Texas fan, you could possibly feel confident in him right now. His best game of the year was against Oklahoma. He threw for 166 yards. He didn't turn the ball over, so at least there was that. But the Texas offensive line, there were questions about that coming into this year. Young and underdeveloped. It's hard to have a lot of development when you're very young. They're replaced a lot from last year. It's not very good. It's just not very good. Nothing is right with Texas on that side of the ball. They would have to go on an incredible run down the stretch for me to see them as a top 25 team. I don't think they should be. But they are beneficiaries of the good old SEC bias. They play at Mississippi State this week. I like the Bulldogs. I do. I'm just saying genuinely. I'm not saying I'm picking them to win the football game. But then they play Vanderbilt and Georgia, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. Yeah, they're losing at least 3 games down the stretch. Disappointing year for Texas, but that can happen sometimes. Winning in college football, it turns out, is very difficult. Washington learned that over the weekend. A lot of calls, and I was on the precipice of ranking Washington going into last week, but I didn't. And I knew they were going to lose the game to Michigan, which they did. Washington is who do they remind me of? They remind me of USC. Washington and USC, to me, are very similar. They are good. I do not believe they are bad football teams, because they're not. I watched the results. I watched the games. They're good. Progress from last year is evident. The work that still needs to be done for both of those teams is also evident, and that's why they're in Tier 2 of the Big Ten and not Tier 1. Nebraska fits this description. If Nebraska, USC, and Washington played a three-way round robin, I bet every team would have one win and one loss. I think USC might be the best of the three. Maybe. They also just gave up over 300 rushing yards to Notre Dame. Can Nebraska do that? No. Can Washington do that? They could. One thing that puzzles me with Washington, where in the world did Jonah Coleman go? I know Damon Williams is great. What's quarterback's best friend? A running game. A running game. Yeah, that hasn't been there enough. I think Washington fans share that particular sentiment at this point in time. They should, because Jonah Coleman leads the FBS in rushing touchdowns. I believe he still has that particular moniker, but you look up and why has Washington lost 2 games? Well, they play Ohio State. Okay, no shame. There's no shame in that. Ohio State is unbelievably good. But you had a 7-7 game against Michigan at the half, and Jonah Coleman ends the game with 16 carries for 50 yards. Not good enough. Offensive line, not good enough. Gave up 187 to Michigan. Frankly, not that bad. But Bryce Underwood is starting to get things going. So I didn't rank Washington last week because I was still on the fence about, I don't know. They're good. I don't know if they're quite that good, and they don't have a big-time signature win, and Michigan would have been not a signature win, but a good one, and then Michigan showed you why Washington's not quite there. Good, not great. Michigan, frankly, fits that category as well. Michigan's a good team. Are they a great team? Nope. They're not a great team. Bryce Underwood's going to be great. 21 of 27, 230 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. I have sung his praises all offseason here on the show. I know Michigan fans think I hate them. I don't. I really don't. I just happen to be really good at picking Michigan games, aside from the game that I still get. Every now and then, I will still get a comment about that time that I picked Michigan to lose the national championship to Washington. Okay. Well, this year in big games, I'm 3-1 when picking Michigan. So I think I've got a pretty good feel for what the Wolverines are at this point in the year. They're a good team. But Bryce Underwood is someone who I wanted to start all offseason, who, for obvious reasons, had me excited just to watch him play football, just see what it was going to be like. It's starting to get there. Washington's defense, not something that you can disregard as being some horrifically bad unit. I don't think they're elite, but they're pretty good. I think Ryan Walters, former Purdue head coach, is a good defense coordinator. When you look at what Bryce Underwood did last week, that might have been the best game he has had to date throwing the football. It's not going to get worse. It's going to get better. I wonder if Arch Manning is going to improve. He could, but I haven't seen it. I'm seeing Bryce Underwood improve. There's still work to be done. It's rough around the edges. But when Bryce Underwood plays like that, when Michigan gets Justice Haynes back in there, Jordan Marshall ran the ball incredibly well. But his longest run of the day was 14 yards. That has not been Michigan's formula for success. The defense forced 3 turnovers of Damon Williams in this game, kept Jonah Coleman to 3.1 yards a carry. I look at Bryce Underwood, and Michigan's got a good one. Michigan's got a really, not every super talented guy works out. Malachi Nelson was one of the top quarterbacks a few cycles ago. He's playing at UTEP. They have 1 win in Conference USA. Some guys can't put it all together, even if they have the physical traits. I don't see that with Bryce Underwood. I see a guy that just played maybe his best game as a passer of the football, still has room to grow. I trust the offensive staff, the philosophy. For the love of all that is holy, Sharon Moore, go into the portal this offseason or hit the trail and find a big-time impact freshman receiver. Find your Malachi Toney, Ryan Williams, DeCorian Moore, anybody. Somebody to throw the football to consistently. It is not good enough. But Bryce Underwood, more than good enough. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.